modern slavery. Darkness is a gift and a curse, you can't save me. Believe from the birth of my skin since pre-K. All I wanted was a friend, maybe a playmate. But they say your skin is too dark, your hair ain't straight. Tragic to a kid in the city trying to be great. Teachers teach you like a dog, it is wrong, there's no escape. Standing in my truth, grounded in the sense of truth. If power goes far and wide, melanin is your prize. Only way to begin, magnify your melanin. Kings and queens, be great, let's elevate and share your story.
I'll hold the space for you to share your story. I'm listening, I'll take it and I'll take it and I'm listening. I'll hold the space for you to share your story.
We make space so you can take space.
Share your story. I'll hold the space for you to share your story. I'm listening, I'll take it and I'll take it and I'm listening. I'll hold the space for you to share your story.
We make space so you can take space.
Before you share your story, let me tell you who I am. Yo, my name is Corey, and speaking truth ain't always easy, but you gotta own it. And unaddressed pain, we can't condone it, cause we done healed from painful moments. That trauma, we pick a bone with. Too much for us to sit alone with. And I ain't perfect or certain that what we doing is working. I'm just asking, how you healing if others is hurting? Share your story.
No pain, no glory. Let me share my story. I got a cougar called Nina, that's my favorite 40. In the streets it's kill or die, so I keep it on me. And I pray, cause some nights I feel the reaper on me. But we straight, past the drama, this a clean slate. Tally up the score, I'm a queen's great. They might catch me slipping, but I keep faith. That's why I'm in and out, like a cheap date. You see me eat the team 8.
I got your back, I hold you down. I got your back, I hold you down. I got your back, I hold you down. I got your back, I hold you down, down, down.
It's a safe space.
I got your back,
we
I
make
hold
space
you
so you
down.
can take space.
I got your back, I hold you down.
It's a safe
I got
space.
your back,
We
I
make
hold
space
you
so you can
down.
take space.
I got your back, I hold you down, down, down.
Peace, 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 peace. Resurrect, resurrect, resurrect. What's good, family? What's good? Tap in. H.O.L.L.A, Ma'at. Power to the people, power to the people, all power to the people, all power to the people struggling to find themselves, power to our ancestors. Everybody, everybody, share the live, free the land, free all our political prisoners, free them all. Share the live, share the live. We tapping into our third web series of our 5-part series. We already got 2 in. Check out H.O.L.L.A TV for one we did on Curve Fest, talking about the importance of Curve Fest. And we did our second one on restorative justice, a case study on restorative justice, co-opting the non-traditional approach. We also got an article out on that as well. Check that out. We are still looking for conversations, really talking about our legacy coming from the community, going into prison, and how our theoretical ideas and programs have been colonized and stolen, and how our leadership have been displaced and erased. And that means our theoretical frameworks are not connected to our legacy of community practices. And it's an attack to the Black community. It's an attack to our elders, and to our elders' work. And, we hoping to study and talk more with people about that work. Today, we are doing our third webinar on Serudj Ma'at in the movement. We'll talk more about that. Next Sunday, we're gonna have our 4th webinar focused on fight for community-specific programs. against displacement, land grab, and ethnic cleansing. We're gonna really have another case study talking about how we got pushed out of the building that we was working in, where the original Black Panthers in New York started, by a slum landlord who illegally locked us out. And we still are legally locked out since April. And that struggle continues. Look forward to that, to see how you could tap in and support us with that around lawyers, community takeovers, community engagement, street outreach. There's a lot of stuff to tap in about that. Our last web series is going to be on September 27th, and it's going to be focused on the Kibaka, Alice, and Lukman Institute of Non-Traditional Approaches to Human and Healing Justice. Really talking about some of our strongest teachings that come from the 1970 prison rights movement and from the formations that develop a lot of the teachings and the practices that H.O.L.L.A stand on. And really as a strategy to attack back institutional racism, while also providing our community with a Black liberation legacy from the institutional memory to really hold on to. So look out for that. Look out for that. I see Jasiri's in the building. What's good? What's good? So everybody share the live, tap in. Jasiri, you want to share anything in the welcoming? Any vibes?
Yeah, thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for tuning in. Ashe.
So we're gonna get into our updates too. We're gonna come back to the libation later. We're gonna get back into our updates. So we want to give a special shout out to Isaac, our big brother, who is holding us down. Isaac Quarterly, Fine Arts, all of this production, and many previous productions. We should also have another conversation about the work that we did, all of the artistic work, political education work, from our logo to the Healing Justice Movement, in the process of building that, to some of the other works that we have done together. So I'm throwing that out to Isaac, man. That might be, us having a conversation about how we've been using art to kind of carry certain kind of conversations. It's a list of updates, Jasiri. I don't know if you see some of the updates, but if you want to say some, I could say some. Shout out to Reverend, Joy Powell, our Mama Rev, political prisoner at Bedford Hills, since the early 2000s. She's being held in that, in that dungeon. She was framed by the Rochester Police Department and the Rochester, in its colonial system. And she's been held captive there since 2006, 2007. She had bogus charges of burglary that they gave her 16 years for. And they said that they wanted her to help tell on somebody on a homicide that she knew nothing about. And she told them, she don't know nothing about that, get away from her. And then they said that they're going to give her another charge. And they gave her a bogus homicide charge that she ended up blowing trial on. She got 25 years to life. And both of those cases are consecutive. She's strong. She's been fighting, doing a lot of legal work, a lot of community work inside of prison to keep herself strong. A lot of fighting inside of prison with the system. But we're working on getting her out. We're working on her clemency. Her clemency is, is coming up. We're working on talking to the governor to really, make a pardon for Rev Joy Powell because she's innocent. Rev Joy also been connecting us to other people in Bedford Hills and our community, other people in Bedford Hills. Yesterday we had a candlelight vigil or at Bedford Hills talking about the state violence that women and trans people are experiencing at Bedford Hills. And the leadership within Bedford Hills asked us to bring public awareness to this situation and asked us to bring community together to have a public conversation and a moment of silence for all of the violence that's going on, and to ask people to build a movement to investigate and stop what's going on at Bedford Hills and across these dungeons across the colonial states. So shout out to everybody who was there yesterday. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Jasiri. Or not, I can keep flowing too.
It was powerful. It was really powerful. Thank New Hour releasing Asian people in prison, women picking up, the People Senate, and Nicole Scott, Sister Nicole Scott. So thanking, a lot of folks who came out to represent and show the Bedford Hill sisters that we're still with them, fighting with them, and fighting against the injustice that is happening to our women and trans family that are on the inside behind the walls. Sure.
So shout out to everybody, Survive and Punish, all of the people, the community members that wanted to be unidentified, but that supported that work. It was powerful for us to be outside, at Bedford Hills yesterday. So thanks to everybody that made that happen. The People Senate has the People's Concert coming up October 20th at the Shrine. So people look out for the People's Senate concert October 20th. That's next Sunday, right? So people want to be there, a lot of entertainment. Those resources, those funds raised are going to support political prisoners, support the People Center's overall objective to develop a consciousness amongst the community that develops a collectiveness within the Senate. So this money is to push and make real the charges of genocide that was, came back as a unanimous verdict at the 2021 International Tribunal held by the spirit of Mandela. Anything else you want to say about the People Center concert?
Yes. It's being held at the Shrine. Did we give that? It's being held at the Shrine. Just want to make sure I get the address there.
We got the flyer up too. So Isaac is putting up the flyer and all that. So people should be able to see the flyer on the live.
All right, great. So it's being held at the Shrine in Harlem, in Central Harlem, I believe on 134th Street in Adam Clayton Powell. We got great, performers. It's going to be an intergenerational crowd. This is really donation based. Is a fundraiser to build funds for political prisoners and prisoners of war, as well as to help build up the People Senate, which is a campaign formation to build up people power. That sees ourselves outside of the Republican and Democratic Party, and so I think it's very important that we people come out, have some vibes, but also meet more people within the movement for liberating our communities and going against not only genocide here in the Americas but genocide globally. Yeah.
We also want to give an update. There's an event going down in Buffalo, October 24th, from genocide to liberation, featuring Baba Jalil Maatian and Matt Myers. That's in Buffalo. Shout out to the work in Buffalo. That same day, October 24th, in Albany, H.O.L.L.A is going to be having a documentary screening, partnering with our sister organization in Albany, the Center for Law and Justice, doing work around the Zero Youth Detention Zone in Albany. So if folks want to learn more about that information, get in contact with us. But we're going to be in Albany, October 24th, 5:30 to 8 p.m. at the Housing Authority building. Also, October 24th, the People's Senate electoral debate is going down. So we're looking forward to that. I don't think the names of who's debating has been released yet, but it should be very informative, very, very engaging. Really, families and people and people who really watch electoral debates should really tune into this to learn some of the tricks that these systems play on us and some of the analysis that we could have when the actual debate takes place. Anything else you want to say about any of those things before we keep it moving on some of that too? Once again, man, free all of our political prisoners. Free them all, free them all, free Kamal Siddiqui, free Mamiya, free Leonard Pelletier, free Rev Joy.
Free them all. Free them all.
Free Jalil Alameen, formerly known as H. Rap Brown. Free Fred Muhammad Burton, Kojo, Jojo Bauer. Freedom all, freedom all. Another quick update on Thursday at the People's Church. The Harlem Palestine Collective is having another political education dinner, 6 to 9 p.m. At the People's Church. Shout out to all of the work that the Harlem Palestine group is doing peace walks all through Harlem, having important conversation, bringing organizations together in Harlem. Another important conversation, thinking about the Black Native Americans, the Black Aboriginals, the American Maroons, particularly around this Indigenous Mourning Day, this decolonizing time of the year. So people want to tap into the Harlem Palestine Community Potluck Dinner. Potluck, so everybody bring their own snacks, dishes to kind of make it a community affair. Shout out to this conversation today. We want to give some shout outs to some of the scholars and experts, that help ground the conversation that we having today. We come from the 1970 prison rights movement, where we come from our families and our families' legacies. And then we come from the 1970 prison rights movement, the Green Haven think tank, the Bedford Hill Sisters, the Resurrection Study Group, Center for New Leadership, and H.O.L.L.A, and the legacies that they come from. But we also want to give a special shout out to the Black Power Media for holding us down on the Candlelight Vigil yesterday. And you can see the Candlelight Vigil work that we did at Bedford Hills on Black Power Media. But they also was central to the conversation we talking today about Serudj Ma'at in the movement and really thinking about philanthropy's role and causing interpersonal and personal harm within organizations and across organizations in the movement, and how that's been a historical story around philanthropy, poverty pimping programs in the nonprofit industrial complex. We also want to give a shout out to Millenniums Are Killing Capitalism, Dr. Ori Burton, Hiram Rivera, Dr. Masamala Odom, and our comrade Tone and Kamal Franklin from, these videos, also Eddie Ellis video that he wrote in the 60s. These are some of the literature, some of the scholarship that we've been pulling on as we've been thinking about the conditions that we are in within the nonprofit and trying to help with our comrades doing social justice work in the nonprofit. Anything you want to add to that, Big Bro?
Nah, thank you. Let me shout them out.
Do you want to start off the sincere apology, or you want me to just keep cooking, man? How are we doing this? Can we go?
Yeah. You should jump into the sincere apology. Yeah.
So our libation today is going to be, one of our pedagogies from our resurrection processes that was developed in prison in the 1960s, late 1960, 1969 in Auburn, when we was thinking about the spiritual and personal development connected to the community development while we was in prison, particularly Auburn. And we understood that, those of us have been alienated from our communities based on the way, colonization, socialization, program pacification, the miseducation, growing up in communities that are experiencing generational poverty, you get separated from yourself, you get separated from your community, you become alienated. And a lot of us in our communities become alienated for multiple reasons. And one of the ways to start healing that alienation is to give a sincere apology to our communities and try to be in a sincere apology stance with our communities. Once again, we start off with a quote from Dr. Odom. And this sincere apology from H.O.L.L.A is really thinking about how do we move towards ideological clarity. So open the quote. The central question is ideological. There is an ideological contradiction which guides people down paths of these economic contradictions. The economic and who is funding is part of the counterinsurgency. Something else, philanthropy and charity were able to move in versus reparations. What we are experiencing is counterinsurgency. COINTEL is just one aspect of it. So we're not talking about COINTELPRO 2.0. We're talking about a continuous attack against Africa and African people that never has stopped. So the attacks come against our movement. And I just want to say that funding has to do with that. Counterinsurgency is a war without terms. What we experience is counterinsurgency. What people in West Papua experience is counterinsurgency. What Palestine is experiencing is counterinsurgency. It's a colonial war against anti-colonial insurgency, right? The Black Power movement was attacked through counterinsurgency at a moment when the movement was creating ideological clarity, right? Without ideological clarity, we lean on opportunism, and which is work that abandons African liberation, right? So we have to turn back to ideological clarity. Shout out to Dr. Odom for that quote. So this conversation we ground today is to address ideological clarity and provide a sincere apology to our community. Community members like H.O.L.L.A from the 7 neighborhoods, from grassroots legacy should know that Black liberation could never fully be established in a white man's business structure, as the nonprofit industrial complex is. There's various areas of needs required for grassroots organizations to develop that are intentionally blocked in the historical racist business structure of the nonprofit 501c structure that is anti-Black and also built on a long legacy of institutional racism. We all in different various, not just H.O.L.L.A, but many of us in social justice work and movements have journeyed. Some of us understand this at different levels. We've seen the harm. We've been a part of some of the harm. We witness how the harm goes unaddressed in many cases, some cases unresolved, and how this has a detrimental impact on personal relationships, individual transformation and development, and on the movement in itself, right? And a lot of times we blame each other and we don't often have a framework to see how the nonprofit and philanthropy is causing hurt within our communities and within our movement. So H.O.L.L.A, like many of you all, the National Healing Collective, have recognized the need for a pedagogy of healing within our current social justice movement, right? We also felt like it was important that we demonstrate to philanthropy the truth about the war and that we tell philanthropy their role in the war on Black communities. And we're sorry that it took us so long to understand this. And that's a sincere apology to our community, to our ancestors, to our family members, for being misused, used, not understanding the nonprofit industrial complex for many years, right? Because people like us coming from these communities, coming from the life experiences, we should never really ever be in a relationship that forces us to abandon Black liberation, right? As community members whose families and communities are still struggling within the war, this analysis that we're sharing today is the least that we could do for our communities, the least that we could offer as a response to the war, as a response to getting us talking about what's next for the war. And we want to close by saying, in a sincere apology, that resurrection is an internal process that starts and ends in the darkness, right? With ourselves, with each other, right? We need to get inside ourselves. We do not need to get outside in the white lights of the material world, but inside the Black void from which we all came. We need to seek ourselves, and we need to be ourselves. Resurrection. So that was our sincere apology, our libation. Also some grounding for the conversation that we about to have about the Serudj Ma'at process. So the Serudj Ma'at process, and Serudj Ma'at is an African Kemetic, and Kemetic is what people call Egypt. The indigenous name for Egypt is Kemet. So Serudj Ma'at is a Kemetic term, meaning restore balance. You know, Mayat, which is a sacred goddess that talks about truth, justice, balance, and equality. And Serudj means to restore. So we was talking about how do we restore balance in our social justice movement. And we want to be clear that we created this process as a community-specific process from our own self-determination, from our own needs to heal, for our own needs of liberation, and for our own needs to continue fighting against state violence without any support from philanthropy, without any permission from philanthropy, but from studying our own personal and collective conditions within H.O.L.L.A and within the movement. And more particularly in 2019, H.O.L.L.A and our sister organization, which is part of our legacy, the Center for New Leadership, we went through a split. But right before that, and even a year or two after that, we were in many conversations and hearing many conversations at conferences. People were calling us. Situation with Glenn Martin happened not too many years ago, right? There was many situations saying that, you know, they're needing healing in the movement. That a lot of our movement that was doing formerly incarcerated work, cure violence work, restorative justice work, transformative justice work, there was a lot of disagreements. And H.O.L.L.A was no different. You know, shout out to the Center for New Leadership, because we have came a long way, and that's our sister organization still. But those gave us hints that the movement was going through things. So we felt the internal need to heal with ourselves, to heal with our elders. The Center for New Leadership is our elder sister organization, to heal with our peers, to heal with other organizations like us in the movement. So we created the Serudj Ma'at process as a ritual, right? To heal out, to have dinners, to share our values, our legacies, our struggles within nonprofit leaderships, to share our gifts from those struggles that sustain us and sustain the movement in general, but also to use that as a study process to bring us together to think about how do we move forward from here. So we called this a community-specific process because it was led by Jasiri, Mashley, A-Rocks, Kumi, Nemo, D. Marissa, mostly H.O.L.L.A organizers, a lot of our youth organizers. We were not getting paid. We didn't raise no grants, no funds for the dinners, for the parties, to develop curriculum. All of that was on our energy and analysis to heal ourselves and to build clarity within our movement. It was deep organization to organization building. So we emailed, called, reached out to organizations, sometimes 10, 12, 13 times, sometimes 3 times, trying to set up time for dinners, for circles, to really have honest dialogue about our tensions within our movement, within our organizations, across organizations, to reflect on and learn lessons of our works, to share historical analysis of grassroots movement struggles for freedom and how our program and theory of changes fit within that scope, and to create a space for us to heal in real time, right? Those were circles we made, and for collective healing rooted in grassroots wisdom and practice. And we also wanted to keep a movement. We want to build a mass movement. So we was telling people to heal with other, have circles with other organizations. We was telling people to show up for dinners and community events where we was trying to study, where we learned together. And this was a process that we did also by reaching out to about 60 different organizations and individuals and leaders in New York, once again, focused on restorative justice, healing justice, transformative justice, reentry services, and care of violence. Lastly, while we was doing that, we also didn't just want to heal with our community and talk about the war. We also want to do this with philanthropy and funders. So we also had healing circles in this same process with all of the funders that were funding us. You know, that we facilitated human and healing justice circle processes centered on the war to really discuss and process tension, to get in dialogues and debate, and to really figure out, you know, where philanthropy stand at on the war, and let philanthropy know where we stand at on the war. And we learned a lot from those processes, you know, over the last 4 or 5 years. And tonight we want to share some of those learnings. Jasiri, you want to add into any of that overview? See you back on. You're on mute. I don't know.
Yeah. I think, as you said, you know, it was a lot of learning and a lot of processing, you know, reaching out to folks, getting to the circle, folks being comfortable enough to share what we're sharing amongst each other. I think that's very important too, because we was creating a safe space for people to, you know, get stuff out that usually isn't spoken about within the within non-for-profit, between people who work with each other. So I think, you know, that's very important. And I think the findings is going to show how, you know, about the contradictions and the issues that we have right now that are, you know, still not being addressed. I think it's very important.
And just to keep going off that point, we, you know, end up having about 35 one-on-one conversations with leaders, organizational personnel, or philanthropy staff. We had about 50 circles with organizations talking about the war, talking about philanthropy, talking about particular questions around our movement. Some of the questions, to give y'all a sense of the type of questions we asked in these conversations, some people we have circles with more than once. You know, we reached out to people like Credible Messenger, Peer Legacy, the Center for Justice, Breathe, Black Women's Blueprint, Reign for Life, this Capacity Development, Life Camp, Fortune Society, Osborne, the Intimate Partner of Violence, New NYC Collaborative, funders like like Brooklyn Community Foundation, Pinkerton, Prospect Hill, Atlas. We had fun circles. We reached out to circles with Courage. Some of our sister organizations that was important for us, but that was not in New York City, like Courage, Melpa, Hackey. So that's just a list of some of the people that was reached out to and part of this process. We asked questions, the ground people, like, what questions do you come into this human and healing justice circle with? What legacy do you want to stand on? Who are your peoples? You know, as an individual and an org you rep, you know, how does it help you heal and liberate our communities? Other questions we asked people in circle that we all collectively share. We told these organizations to bring their leadership to the conversation. We brought our leadership to the conversation. These were circle dialogues. We asked people, where does your leadership struggle at? Where does our movement leadership struggle at? What healing needs to happen between yourself and your organization, or your organization and other organizations, so that we can have a better movement? We asked, what lessons have you learned from the struggle, so that you can share with us now for the next generation to make our movement better? Like, what gifts do you give to your family, to the movement? What legacy do you want to leave behind? Not just in your organization, but, you know, for your people, for the movement. We talked about Serudj Ma'at as Aboriginal people of the Americas, as the Black Aboriginal people, the Black Native Americans. How do we reconcile and heal between each other in the communities that we serve, and our indigenous identity as Black people? We asked what healing needs to happen between communities and funders and philanthropy. We asked, who are the teachers of your program? Where do your programs come from? Where does your evidence-based legacy come from? Do it come from the nonprofit industrial complex? Do it come from philanthropy? Do it come from empirical evidence that is not your teachers from your neighborhood? That's a real question. Where your programs come from? What's your theory of change? How does your theory of change help other Black people in other neighborhoods think about fighting racism globally? Because a lot of, even though it's local, a lot of the racism that Black people face in many places across the world, we can use certain strategies in our own way. So how does your program help other liberation struggles for Black people outside of your context? We ask philanthropy, where does your leadership struggle, right? What healing needs to happen between, you know, and this was staff and philanthropy, senior program managers, you know, new staff in philanthropy. You know, we didn't really talk to that many board members besides Focus for Health board member. So mostly a lot of staff within philanthropy having circles with H.O.L.L.A, but we was asking them what healing needs to happen between themselves and their philanthropy organization so that we can have a better movement. We asked them, is solely providing funding for services to grassroots organization without providing long-term sustainability towards Black liberation, is that still a effective model of philanthropy and social justice, or do that model need to shift? Right? We asked them to reflect on the last 20 or 30 years. Think about all of the procedures, protocols, FRPs, processes, reports, and really consider, has that limited or prevented grassroots organizations developing capacity to solve the issues in their communities, or has that helped? Has all of their processes to make them safe, to make them feel like they or doing whatever, has that really helped the communities actually do the work that they need to do? Or has that prevented the people from doing the work that they need to do? And then lastly, we asked them, how can we reflect on these questions within and outside of philanthropy communities, right? How can we really talk about the racism in philanthropy with the board, but not within a philanthropy context, but within a practice of human and healing justice, right? Can we have that conversation outside of your FRPs and your bylaw structure? But since you're working with communities, can y'all come to a community conversation and be part of a larger conversation about how community people see your practices? So those were some of the things that we shared in those circles with about 30 individuals. Let me restate that. We had about 30 circles, about 30 circles with organizations and philanthropy. And we had about 50 one-on-one conversations with leaders and within philanthropy and nonprofits. And I pause to see if Jasiri want to say anything before we go into talking about how do we analyze that and share some of our findings.
No, I was just thinking, I'm like, them questions was deep when we was getting there. Yo, I don't even think they was answering all of that too. But I think yeah, I do think, these are not easy, these are hard questions, stuff for folks to reflect on. These questions have historical contexts as to and this is also about how do we, address certain issues, between our relationships with philanthropy, non-for-profits, and the community, because I think those are very important on and making those changes happen at those different levels. Yeah.
So, and to your point, like to underscore, all of this H.O.L.L.A did from our own analyzing of our conditions. And then we built a self-determined nation community-specific practice that we developed called Serudj Ma'at, that had a lot of different components to it, even data analysis. We even about to report back how we analyze and collect data from those 30 conversations one-on-one, those 30 healing circles and those 50 one-on-one conversations. And we threw about 3 dinners where people, came to a night out, had food. We was able to order food from some of our family members and local members, local community leaders for those dinners to support local community people and have local community people support us. It was hard work. There were some people we had to reach out to a lot, but it was beautiful work too. And it lets us know that we could build. We don't need funding to build. We got all of the curriculum, the tools, the relationships, the conversations. We can ask funders real questions, not just get questions from funders. Liberation is about us taking more leadership in our lives with each other. I think that was also really important learning that we continue to learn from this process. Once again, it started in 2019 when H.O.L.L.A and the center was going through our own split. And we've been seeing stuff in our movement, but that made us really start to have a deeper reflection to figure out how do we respond to this? How do we develop a praxis to this, right? And then shout out to us in the center because we still love each other. That's still our sister organization, our big sister organization. And we've been journeying towards continuing healing with each other and building towards liberation with each other. So we want to just say that we also did community-specific participatory data analysis process, right? And the first part of us just designing this self-determination project, having the worldview, having the courage, having the framework, you know, to know how to move when your community needs you to move, and having a science to move on. Secondly, we develop curriculum, human and healing justice circle processes. You heard Jasiri talking about the questions from our many years of leading circles, holding circles, having all kinds of circles at different levels with our families, with each other, right? Creating the process where we could have large forums like dinners and gatherings where communities can come together. And then the data analysis, you know, collecting notes, memos, ethnographics, taking videos, and then having collective study of those notes and dialogue to develop thematic analysis and codes. And then having follow-up conversations with ourselves, you know, with people studying Black Power media, millenniums, are killing capitalism, Dr. Ori, tip of the spear, you know, studying the literature, and making sense of those experiences together too. So our findings are really, you know, and we got an article that we're writing about this too. Shout out to our article that just dropped, a case study of restorative justice co-optation of the non-traditional approach, which really talks about counterinsurgency, attacks on the Black liberation tradition, how the nonprofit industrial complex, and certain programs, or many of the programs within it, particularly the restorative justice program. We also mentioned care violence, reentry, Jeremy Travis, peacemaking criminology. Those things have a philosophical and a theoretical and a political root in time and history that overlaps with stealing Black liberation traditions and tricking the people over time. So that article is really important. It's not an attack to the Black community. It's definitely an attack to the system of co-optation, the system of counterinsurgency, and it's to really, you know, to let our communities know that we got a tradition, we got a legacy, and we can't let the state steal our legacy and give us a new legacy. But that paper talks about how there's a history to a lot of these conversations within the nonprofit, within philanthropy, and that a lot of us who are joining the nonprofit conversation often don't know those historical roots to some of these things because we don't learn. You know, philanthropy is not teaching us this, so it's not our faults either. So our findings are really alerting and shattering, and they made us pause. You know, we've been holding on these findings for about a year, and they are things for us to really, really, really consider as a community. Because if you heard some of the names, if we give you the names of the people we outreach to, it's all of the people that's doing the work and doing good work, right? So the number one finding that we find is that, you know, there's a lot of interpersonal, interorganizational hurt and harm that's happening. And the number one reason is because of philanthropy in the nonprofit industrial complex and its administrative structures that cause the harm to the people. And to unpack that a little bit, you know, Eddie Ellis got an article that he wrote in 1966 talking about setimism in the Black ghetto. Black Power media videos we've been talking about, the nonprofit industrial complex, Hiram Rivera, Dr. Ori Burton Tone, Dr. Odom. These are some places to look and study because they breaking down the historical legacy of philanthropy and the historical attacks on the Black community and the grassroots movement community. So when we understand what we're experiencing today, it shouldn't be understood as an isolated incident without that historical understanding that the function of philanthropy was to attack the community. And if you only just blame the interpersonal attacks, you actually missing the whole picture, because part of the program pacification is to make you blame each other while you don't see the real enemy that's doing it. Under the nonprofit industrial model, communities are forced to engage in a white man business structure and leadership structure that's about hyper productivity, administration heavy, and cater to business in a nonprofit leadership style, and that causes all kinds of harm in our communities. We're going to break some of that down later. This structure also rehires new Black leadership into our community, either people that's not even Black and bring them to our community, training grassroots leadership from our community in these liberal fellowships and trainings that come from bourgeoisie paradigms, or bringing in outside leadership, who got, who know how to move in policy or move with the structure, and they become the leaders of our community to do voting tactics and social service schemes that don't get to the root causes or the historical causes of the war. Within this framework, philanthropy, the nonprofit industrial complex, and funders, they determine what is the outcomes, what is success, and what is accountability for our communities. They also create the HRs, the professionalism, the pushing out, the firing, the hiring, what youth, what formerly incarcerated, what woman, what queer, right? They create the culture that allows for push out and firing to become business as usual, and to push out grassroots leadership. The leadership is not rooted in the community or a community legacy. It's rooted in social work. It's rooted in evidence-based arches programs. It's rooted in restorative justice teachings. It's rooted in traditional models of development that might be good for some people, that might be good for some communities, but that are not community specific for our communities, and that actually do more harm than good for our communities. They make us work on mission-driven, single issue dynamics with Black people issues and communities, while family issues are historical, are intersectional, are interwoven, right? And they separate our movements because it make it hard for you to work across your mission or across your issue with another organization or another struggle. Before going into that number one finding of how philanthropy and those subpoints are causing major harm in our movement, and I want to break down what that harm looks like on an internal level, and what we heard from people and what we experienced ourselves, even from our split with the Center for New Leadership. I want to ask you, Siri, do you got anything you want to say about just that first finding about philanthropy being the number one factor causing harm in the Serudj Ma'at movement process? You got any feedback?
That was deep. That was deep. I think, what was real mind-blowing about this process is that, people come into non-for-profit and really don't understand what's going on. I think most time we don't know what's going on in general in society and life when we're, living under, counterinsurgency, when we're living under, Eurocentric ideology. And, just like Nellie Fuller said, if you don't understand racism, you wouldn't understand how it moves around you, maps around you. So I think what was good is that, in these conversations, it was like people was, going into waters that we rarely touch or haven't gotten to, or that people, you know, and I think that was also why, you know, though we reached out to a lot of organizations, a lot of the organizations, some organizations, one didn't hit us back, many didn't hit us back, and that many were very standoffish about what this process was like, or what we were doing, what we were talking about, which is understandable. I think, you know, we should definitely be, you know, very um you know, transparent and want transparency. Um but a lot of people also just didn't want to have these kind of bills. And I think that goes into the internal struggle. That goes back to, you know, Malcolm X, you know, message to the grassroots, right? Um, that, you know, self-determination and healing goes hand in hand, right? Self-determination and self-healing and healing of our communities go hand in hand, and how the contradictions, the economical contradictions, and uh, you know, really hold us back from, you know, seeing the kind of future that we want, type of freedom that we want. Um, yeah, and I think definitely, you know, um, it also, you know, creates a certain kind of leadership, certain kind of people, right? Um, and we started to talk more about that. And I think in the internal, we'll get to more around how the non-for-profit takes us away from actually healing and transformation in a certain way. I'll pass.
And you know that finding of philanthropy and a nonprofit being the number one harm that's causing internal hurting. Some of the hurting that we learned from our comrades and from ourselves is that people are saying that our African-centered non-traditional approaches are absent and lacking, and also the leadership of African-centered people and non-traditional approaches, people are missing from the leadership within the nonprofit structure. There's no grassroots youth leadership pipelines straight towards senior and executive leadership, right? Formations are not developing pipelines to transfer knowledge, to develop youth who could carry the leadership to the next generation. It's about everybody just being in leadership for 20 and 30 years. On top of that, there's no mind leadership, no woman leadership from our Black liberation and independent struggles, or the intersections of our queer leadership, enough in our movements too, as another form of pipeline movement and our intersectional wisdom within this traditional structure. Um, a lot of our grassroots organizing projects are not being centered, they are absent. And what we got in many nonprofits are things that do voting and stuff that do social services or provide services. But direct political education, consciousness raising, serious healing justice and human justice, and grassroots organizing to attack back and hail back from institutional fights are missing completely from leadership within nonprofit and programs from nonprofit. This is leading to the splits within movements, splits within organizations, splits across organizations, right? Ideological struggles, um, relational struggles that look like backbiting, right? Local and national gossiping of each other, sexual abuse, physical abuse, stealing and or allegations of stealing people's programs from each other, um, fighting over funding, fighting over capitalism, telling funders not to fund certain people, funders working with certain people to leave other community members out, right? And like I said, we're not outside of this. We was going through stuff with our sister organization. We heard and seen this before that situation in 2019 and definitely after it. We wanted to address this, right? You know, we understood that there's a historical story to this after studying this more, right? And there was a lack of addressing the individual healing when we in these white supremacist structures, even though a lot of community know that this is going on, because when we talk to people, people know this. No one, like Jasiri said, people don't have healing circles within their organizations. People are not having conversations or healing with each other. It's, you know, really, you know, hard for us to get to certain kind of healing within the movement, even though people know a lot of this stuff is going on. So it's not enough organizations addressing the issues. Organizations having or don't want to have circles internally or across organizations, because we ask people, are you having circles with other organizations? Do you and your staff have circles about these things? And most people are saying no. So there's not enough healing happening in our movement for, within our organizations, across organizations, between the community, to get a community analysis so that we can heal with funders, right? We need to ante up on some of those things. So before we go in the last 5 minutes, even though we got a lot of points, we want to try to say some of this kind of quick. We want to talk about what are some future things to think about, what are some directions to move forward in, what are some things that we suggest from studying this, from learning this process, what we've been doing and what we suggest, other people do. And, we look for feedback to help make these better and to find more strategies to move forward in. But Jasiri, anything you want to say about that internal struggle before we move into the future directions?
No, definitely. I think how you laid it out. I don't know how else to, get into. But I do think I think that is just, devastating. We are supposed to be, leaders of our community, organizations that our community supposed to be coming to get guidance, support, femtorship, mentorship, where to go from A to B, and even the social services is good, but when the social service, that's why the Black Panther was so incredible, because they did everything with political education. Like, you can't give somebody no service in no genocidal state, and you can't give no services to folks in a genocidal state and think that their continuous and sustainability of their needs will be met, right? And I think that's very important, because literally the Black community, that's why non-traditional approach to criminal social justice is very important, because the Black community is under attack by the institutions themselves, which are failing us. The non-for-profits are failing us. When we ourselves, the non-for-profits, are not addressing the larger historical critical issues that our communities are going through. And when we ourselves don't engage in those contradictions within our organizations, and then, tend to, use our organizations or use the non-for-profit as safety nets to pay our bills, to have a type of lifestyle that the lumpen does not have, to have a lifestyle that our families do not have, right? You making six whatever figures, and your sister lives in the New York City housing development, which they call the projects. And not saying it, but communicating, understanding in those communities the disinvestment. Yeah. And like the quote from the beginning, it's an economical contradiction that is just thinking about, we was listening to this show not too long ago that talked about independent African schools and education. But they talked about the Jewish community and how they thrive. And the way they thrive is because of ideology, because of their culture. And that is principled. It is disciplined. It is structured in a way that if you want to be in our community, you have to follow these things. And if you follow these things, we will help you. We will sustain your family. We will sustain you. Right? However, we do not have those economical or cultural foundations in the Black community. Actually, every other group makes money off the Black community. Right? Philanthropy makes money off the Black community. Right? The Jewish community makes money off the Black community. The Asian community makes money off the Black community. The Arab community makes money off the Black community. So I say that to say, because we have to see how neo-colonization and neoliberalism is a very huge effect on us, right? And that we have to, if we are going to be in these positions in these non-for-profits, or saying that we are leaders of our community, the ones who, then we must address the economical contradictions. We must address the internal contradictions of things that we are not doing, but we're asking other people to do. Things that we are not doing, but we are but we are putting ourselves in a position to then communicate that we will get these things done for our community, and then those things do not get done. So yeah, I think the findings is much more deeper than how I'm expressing. And I do think and it is clear that other people know. It is clear that other people know. It is clear that we know. And I think, we be afraid too. We be in fear, and also we also lack a sense of community, a sense of unity, a sense of power as a unified people. Yeah.
I say, man. Everybody share the live. We wrapping up, man. We just are coming to the closing of our third web series, really talking about Serudj Ma'at and the movement. And we talked about the reason why we developed the Serudj Ma'at ritual movement process of self-determination, and what was the analysis, and the process, and the methodology, and the questions that grounded that. We talked about some preliminary, some findings from that. And we want to just wrap up. You know, we wish we had more time, but hit us up. We do want to leave y'all with some future directions, strategies we continue to do. We think we should all be doing stuff that we see other comrades in the field doing that we think is important when trying to build towards Black liberation, liberation of this colonial state, and you know, our own personal healing in the process. So the important work that this is work that's kind of missing from nonprofit that we are asking leaders to think about doing or to do, or these are the things that we do. These are the things that we think could move against program pacification, move against the internal hurt that we are going through because of the nonprofit program pacification and the harm that it's causing that lead to internal harm within our organizations and across organizations and across our personal and interpersonal relationships. So number one, we talking about spirit work, ancestral work, right? So your personal spiritual work and engagement, that's really important in this work and you know, as a practice of justice, as a practice of liberation, from, you know, and that's more to talk on that. Within that, connections to elders as a practice of relationship building and knowledge transferring, right? Memorializing ancestors. So this is the kind of work that's really important. We could talk more about that. Family work. Number two, family work. Doing work to heal and build and sustain and grow and circle back. Like all of the stuff, you know, some of us, we might learn going to school, being a nonprofit that some of our family members have. It's not to get so far ahead of them or to try to act like you whatever. It's to use that, because it's our knowledge anyway in most of these universities, to rebuild strategies with our family and to do healing with our family. And for H.O.L.L.A, which is connected to the legacy of Black liberation, our families is Black liberation. Our family is the movement. In the nonprofit industrial complex. And a lot of us even say this, like, I'm going to work. Your family will be talking to you like, oh, when you're going out the house, you going to work, when you're going to work, or you going to work. No, like, you know, and you really got to reframe that and build a family praxis and a healing praxis too, because a lot of hurt in our families, but a family healing and movement praxis where our families are tighter, security wise, strategy wise, but also in movement. You know, our family and movement is more one. Black land as a site of healing, as a site of self-determination, as a site of revolution and generational healing, as a site to really develop generations of community, to be in conversation with nature and herbs. So our work should be focused on building Black land, cadreing to build Black land, having many strategies around how do we work together, how do we build our relationships, how do we build multiple relationships, how do we stop being white businessmen and working within the business structure, and how do, you know, that's like funding you 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and how do we develop an African worldview of economics and sustainability, and that comes from the land. Right? How do we have some land that we say is ours as a movement, as a nation? You want to add anything, or you want me to keep flowing and then you could jump in? Let me flow and you could jump in. Cadre, inter-organizational work, like we said, like our elders said, like these videos said, philanthropy and nonprofits keep us in single sector work, single mission-driven work. Right, so we need to actually move outside of that structure. Kwame Ture says, whatever the system or the state does, you do the opposite. You know, you do the opposite. They tell you to have a single mission and only work with one thread, just do housing. You make sure you do housing, incarceration, political prisoner, youth development. You don't have them just have you in a single line, right? And How do we do more inter-organizational work that's not about propping up our logos, our missions, but is about propping up the local communities that are actually experiencing the war and our actual families that are actually experiencing the war, and not just making it service-based, but making it transformational based where we don't need the institutions in the first place. And how do we use our institutional logos and budgets and time to do interorganizational work that's community specific, building up community leadership and not organizational status and leadership, right? So even if we leave the organization, our neighborhoods have that wisdom. It's not about what's the next ED coming in, like we already building that currency within particular neighborhoods that have been facing the war historically and ongoing of this colonial fascist state and its programs and institutions of social justice. Two more things. Grassroots leadership development. We talked about our mod leadership. We talked about the intergenerational work that includes elders and ancestors, right? In the process, elders councils, ancestors councils, intergenerational work, passing the torches to youth, having sacred spaces for our mod leadership, knowing the science of how matriarchal leadership plays a part of Black community development and Black liberation struggles, African rites of passages, right? Circle back journey processes, right? How do we fight against funding and philanthropy that's anti-Black youth? One of the quotes that the state and the nonprofit and the COINTELPRO and program pacification still maintain is to, attack our youth leadership. This is what the state, by Special Agent Raymond M. Bryers of COINTELPRO said, the Negro youth, I mean the Black youth, the African youth, and the moderates, I mean whoever else, I mean Quad, whoever else trying to roll with the Negro youth, must be made to understand that if they succumb to revolutionary teachings, they will be dead revolutionaries. And this is after killing Fred Hampton, after locking up Eddie Ellis, after attacking George Jackson, right? So our families and many institutions roll with this. They make us athletes. They make us join the army. They don't want us to stay in our Black liberation tradition. And the nonprofit industrial complex is no different than that. So any of our movements across the world, across the country, was led by youth leadership. So why in nonprofit leadership do we got elders, if you want to call them elders, some of them might not even be called elders, but older folks who've been in leadership for 10, 15, 20 years, and know, if you look at their program or their organization, they have no plan for developing youth leadership. That's a problem in Black communities. That's a problem for liberation struggles, because everywhere we go, the liberation comes from our youth leadership. Closing, this conversation really talks about community could heal with each other. We could self-determine, we could create processes, and we actually got healing to do with each other. And we need to hold ourselves accountable so that we can hold funders accountable, because funders are the main perpetrator of the hurt that we are facing within our organizations and across our organizations. And while we tell each other truth and while we tell each other real stuff, we haven't created a procedure and a process where we can have real conversations with funders about the war. And the Serudj Ma'at process that H.O.L.L.A has done is an example of how we could build on that. And with that, I'll pass it to Jasiri if you want to say any more closing words. Nah. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in today. Share this live. This is Serudj Ma'at in the movement. Once again, we did a lot of circles. We got a lot of curriculum, a lot of notes, a lot of analysis. I don't know how well of a job we did with explaining the rigor in this methodology, how it wasn't funded by the state, how we want more community-based organizations to actually build on this, critique it, do their own process, right? And study the Eddie Ellis article, study the Black Power Media videos and the Millennium are Killing Capitalism videos with Hiram Rivera. Study Dr. Ori's book, Tip of the Spear. A lot of the wisdom that our community need, particularly around this conversation, particularly our community in a nonprofit. If you haven't read those are critical reads. Free the Land, Free All Our Political Prisoners. We'll be back next Sunday, focused on our fourth web series talking about displacement and the struggle for community space against ethnic cleansing. You don't want to miss that. These analyses that we are sharing with the community, restorative justice co-optation of the NTA, Serudj Ma'at in the movement, fighting community programs, fighting against ethnic cleansing. These are serious analysis. We look for your feedback and we hope that you take it serious. Free the land, free the land, free the land.
More, free them all.
Free them all, free them all, free them all, free them all. Shout out to the Bedford Hill sisters. Shout out to Rev Joy. And shout out to all of our ancestors and all of our political prisoners and our families who give us, that look, that energy and that love, that keep us resurrecting. Peace.
Peace.
Same shit, different day.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day.
I'm on that shit too. Reside in places other people gon' through shit too. We young and kids would die at night because that shit's cruel. Men, they don't hang and they don't bang me cause that shit's cool. Dreams evaporate, let me elaborate. Since birth they giving me shit food. Sexualized 3/4 of a man and put me in a gorilla shit zoo. Told me pain is how you gain, how the whole world not against you. Cause everything you touch you colonize. I ain't fucking with those dollar signs. But a heavy heart with a hollow mind. Pass me the torch, I gon' call it down. Universe said it's our time. Line sage while I'm blowing haze. That's how we empower minds. Cointel trying to have a snitching. Trying to know all about the mission. But it's death before we drop a dime. I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day.
I guess the D's on that shit too, cause black people dying, it's not an issue. It's never a problem to them, cause they don't want that shot, that pistol, it's a missile. Cause when you kill one, that shit ripples. They don't understand the shit that we already been through. It went from slavery to being someone free. Now all they doing is modifying shit into modern day slavery. It's all a scheme. I remember Martin had a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out its highest dream. That's what I believe. But it's 2018 and all I fucking see is our people locked up physically and mentally. That's Donald dreams. And every day I pray that somebody I love don't end up 6 feet under me. So I guess I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different
reside in places other people going through shit too. Where grandma, uncle, sister, cousins flip that brick too. Or maybe have to cause the will survive is sick too. Plague of the 80s, mama even smoked that shit too. Had all her life to heal from, I know she ain't meant to. A 5% a queen with 4 kids paying rent too. Ride for your rollie while you riding in your rent too. Just so those babies could get checkers for they dent too. This street shit meant to. Cause nobody out here in these streets to defend you. Cause the whole world been on that shit to infuse you with that sick news. Playing with this sick blues, cause I've been on that shit too.
Same shit, different day, na 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 na. Same shit, different day, na na na.
I'm on that shit too.
Same
Shit, different day.
Na na na.
Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day, na 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 na. Same shit, different day, na na na.
I'm on that shit too. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day.
Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Na na na.